Hello, everybody, and welcome back to E3 2018. So, Shaq News. I'm Donovan Erskine. I'm joined by my co-host Greg Burke. Today, we're talking to Peter and Earl from from Indivisible. Sorry about that. Bloodstain's coming up next. Look out for that. From Indivisible. How you guys doing today?
Doing all right. Glad it's the last day of the show, but it's
been
a good
last
one.
day. Not much time left. So we're going to get to Indivisible in just a moment, but before we do that, we do want to show you guys a trailer for the game. So we're going to go to that now. Here's a trailer for Indivisible.
Brody, wait!
All right, so that is a trailer for Indivisible. So, Peter, for fans watching at home that just saw that trailer for the first time, and that was their introduction to Indivisible, give a little context for them. Tell them what the game's all about.
Yeah, so Indivisible is kind of a hybrid Metroidvania with sort of a Japanese-style RPG battle system.
Yes.
In the game, if you're familiar with the PlayStation 1 Classic Valkyrie profile, you'll kind of know how to play the battles in this, but each of your party members is assigned to one of the face buttons, so
yes.
Your party is kind of like a customizable fighting game character. There are over 25 playable characters, so there are a lot of ways to kit out your team.
That's you guys, yes.
You guys came from the team of Skullgirls. So can you talk about what you learned? Because that's a great. If you guys haven't played the game, play it. It's an amazing. Controllers were thrown, friendships were smashed. It was a great time. Talk a little about what your team learned from Skullgirls that you kind of brought over into Indivisible.
Sure. Well, one thing is definitely, so 2D animation is our wheelhouse. And one thing that was kind of unique to our animation production pipeline for Skullgirls was just the method that we implement animations. So initially, an attack or a move will be keyframed out, and the rough frames will be passed on to implementation in the design side. And before that animation gets further cleaned up or finished, we'll put it in and give it some functionality and make sure it moves the way we want it. And that helps us identify what else we would need from that animation and what kind of gaps we need to fill. So that really helped us. So from that point on, we would pass it back to animation, and they would fill it out and give it the in-betweens it needed. So that really helped us curtail waste. So on the entire project of Skullgirls, like just a handful of wasted animations, and eventually we managed to work them back in and reuse them for some.
I think only 3
group.
ended up not being used.
Yeah.
We had 7 at one point, and then they got put into double, the shape-shifting character. So yeah, we had almost no wasted animations on that whole game.
That's a good way to do it, though. Double, right?
Okay, so when you're putting Indivisible together, what would you say is probably the most challenging part making this game happen?
I would say probably building the levels.
Yeah.
Level design.
Yeah. I mean, having come from a fighting game, in a fighting game, the stages are pretty much very beautiful boxes.
Uh-huh.
And then going from that to, very large, explorable, meticulously handcrafted levels, has definitely been an adjustment for us.
It's also kind of a fun challenge to try to introduce the both traversal abilities and battle mechanics. Because our previous titles of fighting game, it already comes with some understanding that you're going to have to figure out the steep learning curve and kind of figure out how the mechanics work. But in a game like Indivisible, you really have to pace out and introduce those concepts very deliberately, so the player's not overwhelmed. And it's been a challenge, but a fun challenge to figure out how to pace those out. And we're still making adjustments and making sure everything is introduced in a very digestible pace. Our backers who are playing the backer preview now that's available are a lot of those concepts are kind of thrust in there because we want to make sure that they get a chance to try everything. But in the final game, we're still tweaking how those are introduced and what's the right balance of making them naturally introduced so people can understand them well.
So, what has the fan feedback been to this game since it's been revealed? What has the audience measure kind of been like with you guys?
It's been pretty phenomenal. I mean, we have really amazing fans. Obviously, they supported the funding of the game through our Indiegogo campaign. Thank you for that, by the way. And they really connected to the characters. A year after we announced it, and we had cosplay. Like, we have a bunch of cosplay, like, before the game is even announced.
Before it's even
the
out,
characters
that's awesome.
are, people are really connecting with the characters, which is awesome. And yeah, generally, I mean, they funded the game in part because we had a playable prototype, so they kind of knew what to expect.
Okay, that's good.
But it's, we want to keep building on that and, providing them more depth and, more characters to play with, too. And so far, the feedback on all of that has been really great.
Gotcha. And is this your first E3 with Indivisible here, or have you?
No, we actually were here last year with an earlier version of it, but the game's come a long way since then.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. So how much has changed since your last E3 here with the game?
So since last year, I mean, the level is actually fairly similar to the one we had last year, because the other levels are in various stages of being arted. But we've added a lot of new mechanics and stuff like that, and characters since then. If Earl wants to go into that.
Sure. Oh, yeah. So a couple of things. One, we added cutscenes. In our previous version of the backer preview, people were like, "Oh man, there's no story, and where's that going to come?" Because that's going to be a big part of the game. Gotcha. So we introduced some this sort of simple dialogue box cutscenes. You'll see there will be even more types of those in the full game. We also added enemy blocking, so characters can do a guard crush. Some characters can do a guard crush. We also added. What else did we add?
Juggling.
Oh yeah, juggling. So people used to fighting games that we write at home. The longer you keep enemies kind of suspended in the air, the more ED meter, the super meter, you'll be able to generate that you can use for supers, which in turn lets you potentially, depending on what character you're using, juggle the enemies even further. So it kind of gets that whole battle flow going. And we also introduced 3 new characters. I believe it was Baozai, Latigo, and Nuna. Baozai and Latigo have pretty intricate mechanics, but Nuna's her trap mechanic. She can plant little plant traps that if the enemies run over them, they kind of blossom into these squash patches. And she's kind of plant themed. It's actually really OP, and we totally need to nerf her.
You're like, that's cool. Let's keep that in. It's broken. I don't care. It's cool.
It looks like a wimpy attack, but because it interrupts enemy attacks, it's incredibly overpowered.
Yeah.
Because you can it's like there's a giant spider monster, and it's like, boop, and it's like, oh, well, I'm not going to attack you now. And yeah, it makes it way too easy.
It makes it fun,
cases.
though. I mean, the enemies don't really attack in Destiny, so I mean,
right.
And it was still fun.
But it actually highlights kind of an interesting aspect of the battle system because the battle system is pretty dynamic, and there are really only semi-defined turns. As long as an enemy's not attacking and you have an action available, you can just go ahead. So if an enemy takes their turn and they get interrupted, if you have an action available, you can capitalize that and go ahead and start your turn because they're now vulnerable. So ends up highlighting kind of the flexibility of the system.
No, Peter, I asked you this at pre-E3 a little bit, Judges Week, but I just want to get the answer on stream. Did this start out as like a fighting game that morphed into what it is today, or was it always supposed to be like a turn-based RPG?
So yeah, it was pretty much always supposed to be this.
Okay.
We were pitching projects, and another publisher, who will not be named, asked for a pitch that was kind of like Child of Light. So we all went and played it and came back and said, okay, well, what is it? It's a platformer with a Japanese, kind of RPG battle system. And we were talking about it, and Mike and I are big fans of Valkyrie Profile, and it was like, okay, well, Valkyrie Profile is a platformer RPG, and it has kind of a fighting game like battle system, so that's a really good fit for us. So yeah, it kind of started there, and then suddenly it wasn't just a platformer; it was a Metroidvania with this. And Mike was like, "Well, we have so much memory now compared to the PS1. We don't need to worry about battle. We don't have to have a battle transition, with a load screen and all that kind of stuff. We can just do it instantly and seamlessly." So we built on that, and yeah, just over time, it kind of kept building off of that.
So, out of all the playable characters in the game, who would you say are your personal favorites?
We got asked this earlier in the community Q&A. I'm going to probably say Naga Rider, who is kind of a Thai-themed Sentai character. So yeah, he's pretty fun.
He's a good choice. I have to go with Lan Chi, who is a big, giant, fluffy dog, who has my favorite move in the entire game. He basically, one of his supers is he plops down to take a nap, and while he's napping, like this magical electric hand comes and pets him and builds up his static electricity. And when he wakes up, he shakes around like a dog to discharge all of that static and do a whole bunch of damage. It's awesome.
I have to say, one of my favorite characters I played in your demo was the guy who he's I don't know his name. I play a lot of games, folks. I don't know his name. He has the gun that you have to reload.
Oh, Latigo. Yeah.
He's he looks very sophisticated. Like when you run out of ammo, he's like, have derivative amount of ammo. He's so collective the whole time, even when he's fighting. I really like that his animations are really animated. I guess I can say that one. He's very animated.
He's got a lot of personality in his stature and the way he holds himself. My favorite thing with Latigo, one of his supers, his level 2 super, he loads this special ammo that lets his bullets travel through and do multiple hits as they go. So the wider the enemy is, the wider their vulnerable box is, the more times they'll hit as they pass through. So it does a ton of damage.
It's weird because
he's really, really good against the boss of the demo, because the boss is very wide, and he gets 6 hits for each shot.
It's very interesting to me because I grew up in turn-based RPGs, and they were very slow. And if you go back and you play Final Fantasy 7 or 9, you're like, God, this is slow. And you're just this is incredibly slow. And then but it wasn't when you were 13 or whatever. And then playing you guys really seem to have improved upon that turn-based formula where I feel like I'm constantly either guarding, building meter, pressing a button, timing something. I'm always doing something. There's no input my commands, wait, watch the other person do it, wait, input my commands. You're always doing something. And you always have to time it well to get the maximum. I mean, you can get through a fight mashing A, but that's not very fun. You know what I mean? You got to timing, learn the combos, learning how to juggle, like you guys said. And it really opens up this whole, I only played it for about an hour, but I started to see this whole path of gameplay just start to open up, and the abilities and stuff chaining together. I'm like, this has got really deep mechanics.
Yeah, I mean, we really wanted to, for one, in terms of pacing, comparing it to the old Valkyrie Profile system where it's just painfully slow, and it's still super fun for a classic title, but just you do one super and it takes 20 seconds to finish. I
didn't realize I could do the super multiple times. I'm I thought I got it once every couple battles, but they're no, it fills up. I'm what?
Oh yeah,
because I remember limit breaks. I remember, and then you got it once every boss battle. And it's no, this thing you want to spam almost. It's really fun.
It's been an ongoing process to kind of balance the timing and make sure things feel right. But like you said, we want to have lots of depth so that by the end of the game you can time your blocks more efficiently, so you don't spend more meter on blocks, so you can do more supers, and you can even time blocks to do we haven't finalized a name, but sort of Just Defend in Garo Mark of the Wolves, where you block at the last moment and it actually has a benefit.
Yes.
You heal a tiny bit.
Timing.
So, yeah, exactly.
Timing in a fighting game. Who would know? And it's fighting light game.
Yeah, I mean, just in general, we want it to have a lot of depth, but we also want it to reward you getting better at it. So, I mean, just talking to people here, they're like, yeah, when I first get, start, I'm kind of struggling with it, but then it starts clicking, and now I'm doing bigger combos, and now I'm generating a lot more IDI because I'm guarding well, and now I'm doing more supers, and like it gets faster and more fun the better you get at it.
Gotcha. So I want to talk more about the characters themselves.
Yeah.
So it seems like they all have their own unique personalities and things that make them unique, which is really important. You look at games like Overwatch, where that game's entire brand is the charisma of those characters and how identifiable they are. How important was that to you guys when designing the characters in your game, and how'd you go about doing it?
I mean, that's very important to us. Lab Zero, while we're a game company, we kind of think of ourselves as an IP company. And, having those characters, is just a big part of our identity, having likable, just interesting, fun characters. And part of our, character creation process is very focused on making sure that we get as much personality as possible in all of the moves. Because, even just like little details in their faces and their, their game sprites, like matters a lot. And so, yeah, we really just try to push all of that stuff as much as we can.
Gotcha. And then you were talking about the super moves earlier. I heard Greg was talking about Latigo's super move and how you liked it and everything.
Latigo. I am Latigo.
So I know it's important when you have a game and there's super moves, you got to keep everything balanced. And you were telling us earlier about how the one character, who was it that's got a pretty overpowered
Nuna.
Yeah, so what is that like, trying to keep things balanced for a skill level, so there's not one character that everybody goes to that's overpowered that they can just abuse to speed through the game?
Yeah, I mean, I think Earl can talk about this but because it's a single-player game, we don't have to be perfectly balanced. But obviously, you want them to be close enough that, like you said, this isn't the one party that everybody's going to use to win the game.
Right.
Gotcha.
And sometimes we'll discover a thing that feels really overpowered, but it's actually really fun. So in those cases, and this happens in fighting games too, where like, a bug was discovered, but actually everybody really loves exploiting this bug, so let's just balance it a tiny bit so it's like not too bad.
Well, the Street Fighter 2 combo system was a bug, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well,
it was originally like a bug,
yeah.
canceling the moves. Like move canceling is a bug, and it became a mechanic. So
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So in the case of like Nuna, the girl with the plant power that can interrupt attacks, in a case like that, rather than like remove the ability, leave it and have some of the more powerful enemies not be as heavily affected by it, so that people can still do it, but it's not quite as broken. And we're also almost sort of okay with people finding something, like if they like a character and they feel like a particular mechanic is really, really effective, make sure that it's not so easily discoverable so that everybody ends up defaulting to that. But we want people to be able to explore characters and be like, oh man, I really love the way this works, so they can kind of build their team around that and have fun that way.
Gotcha. So as we come to an end here, I want to ask, you guys have a release window set for Indivisible?
Yeah, the first half of 2019.
First half of 2019, okay. Then any platforms nailed down?
Yeah, PlayStation 4, Xbox One, Nintendo Switch, and Steam for Windows, Mac, and Linux.
That's also, it's coming to everything, really, and it's always awesome.
Basically everything.
February 22nd confirmed? Yes?
No.
That seems to be
Actually, it's coming out tomorrow.
Oh, dude! No, he's kidding. He's kidding.
I'm totally
he's
kidding.
He's kidding.
Yeah.
Everybody got really excited.
But it's always great to hear people say the game's coming to Switch. It's such a great platform,
It
especially
is.
for
It's a
indie
perfect
titles.
platform. Absolutely.
Yeah, so
I think it's going to play really well on the Switch
Yeah,
too.
it is.
Like,
It's gonna be a fun
just
game
that
to take
nice
on the go.
screen and everything.
Absolutely.
Well, I can't wait to check it out. Peter and Earl, thank you guys for stopping by Shack News booth, and thank you all for tuning in. Shack News E3 2018. Check out Indivisible when it launches in the first half of 2019. We're going to be right back talking about Bloodstained. Stay tuned.